Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to An Unexpected Killer Secrets of Ancient.
After a long September day in 2003, it's just another night out with friends. But when you add a volatile love affair and a rash of violent home robberies in the area, ending in a brutal murder, detectives are faced with the puzzling question: who killed Michael DeHakis?
He is the last person that anybody would want to murder.
Situated in Pima County, Tucson is the second largest city in Arizona. Many refer to it as the oasis of the desert.
Tucson is a great town. The metropolitan area is about 1 million people, but Tucson likes to think of itself as a small town.
It's about a third the size of Phoenix, and it's the city that doesn't want to grow to be like Phoenix. So we're completely opposite as far as that goes. So it's very hometowny. Everybody seems to know each other, especially in the yoga community.
The Midtown area of Tucson, although crime is typically higher in this part of the city, it boasts a vibrant arts and restaurant district, as well as many of the city's top urban attractions. Midtown is where most Tucsonians eat, drink, shop, and play.
We love our Mexican food. We love our festivals.
Michael DeHakis is a guy living life on his own terms, and that's just the way he likes it.
His home is in the Midtown region of Tucson. A lot of older homes there, quite a lot of traffic, not a particularly safe neighborhood.
It's got its pockets of crime, infested areas, just like any other major city.
Friday, September 28th, 2003, at 6 a.m. While walking her dog, a neighbor discovers Michael's body. She calls 911.
The body was discovered on the front porch. She saw his body and saw that he clearly had some trauma.
The neighbor calls police, telling them there's a body and a lot of blood on the porch of a house on North Sparkman Boulevard. On-duty officers are on the scene within minutes.
We were called as a homicide team, I believe it was around 6 a.m. And when I arrived there were other officers on the scene already, uniformed officers. All I was told it was a dead male, possible homicide victim laying on his porch outside his residence. We did a walkthrough and we found the victim, Michael DeHakis, laying there on his porch, face up, on his back, and a lot of dried blood around his head. His body was warm to touch. Felt that he probably died within the last 8 to 12 hours.
The coroner identified his wound as a gunshot wound, did not find an exit wound, so the bullet was still in his head.
It was clear to us that the victim had been shot by a handgun or a rifle. We weren't sure at the time. Our next step is to canvass the area, talk to neighbors, see if they heard anything, heard any gunshots, things of that nature. Michael was a machinist by trade, so we had a workshop right outside his kitchen door. The neighbor across the street thought that Michael was alive on the day before. He heard Michael's compressor going on and off in his machine shop, so he felt that he was home because whatever Michael would use as a machinery, the compressor would be on. Through Michael's cell phone that was in his bag, I was able to gather contacts from the phone, and we found his son. His son arrived.
Michael's youngest son identifies the body. The detectives set about interviewing friends and family to get a better understanding of who Michael was, and hopefully a lead that could point to a motive for the killing.
He seemed like a fun-loving person. He would get along with everybody, kind of a free spirit. He had been married and divorced and had a few kids. They all loved him, and he got along with everybody. I think even his ex-wives got along with him very well.
It's apparent early on that Michael DeHakis definitely lived the hippie lifestyle. His home is in a low-income section of town that is known for its transient populations. And yet, everything detectives are being told about Michael DeHakis, what friends and family and known associates say about him, is that he's the most stable and reliable guy they know.
He was a very charismatic person, almost always had a smile on his face.
Everyone said wonderful things about Michael, that he was a caring person, he was a joyful person, just this nice, peaceful soul type of guy. The more you heard about him, the more you kind of wished that you met him.
My relationship with Michael initially was, he was my yoga instructor. A friend of mine introduced me to Michael because he was in his yoga class, and I had never taken yoga before, and so he introduced me to Michael, and we grew to be rapid friends. It's a person you could get along with very, very easily.
Besides his knowledge of yoga, his charisma might have had something to do with his popularity with the female students.
And he had long, flowing hair, and he dressed like a hippie. He didn't have a car. He actually drove a bicycle everywhere he went, and the girls loved him.
Everyone said he was very charismatic, that he was flirtatious. He loved the women, and they loved him.
He is the last person that anybody would want to murder.
But someone did, and friends and family are shocked when it happens.
I drove home from work and was watching the local news when it came up with a news story of a murder that had occurred midtown. And I heard Michael's name mentioned as the victim of a burglary gone wrong.
When we got word that a man was shot to death on the front porch of his home, of course it sounded at first that it might have been a botched burglary.
We felt that we did have a foiled burglary, that the victim had come home and stopped the intruders. There appeared to be items stacked outside his residence. There was guitar cases, a violin case, a handbag was found on the sawhorse on the side of the house next to these stored violins and guitars. And there was a broken window in the front of the porch area. It looked like it went into a kitchen. Upon going into the residence, we were able to see that there were more musical instruments placed inside the kitchen door to go outside. There was an amplifier, a guitar stand.
And the thought was that perhaps because this was a neighborhood that had been burglarized frequently, that it was natural that the police started looking at known burglars.
We did find a large shoe print, like kind of a waffle shoe print outside the front door.
Could this be just another random attack gone wrong? Or has Michael's charisma attracted some unwanted attention?
There were many different scenarios coming through.
Both of them had been taken into custody, and the handgun was involved.
She had gotten drunk and pointed that pistol at her own husband.
Tucson, Arizona has a darker side. Crime, drugs, poverty, and a rash of home robberies in the Midtown area. Michael DeHakis, a yoga instructor in Free Spirit, is gunned down on his front porch in what looks like a robbery gone wrong.
We found items that were kind of a disarray in his bedroom. It looked like there was an area where there was a lot of musical instruments. Well, they weren't there anymore. They were out in the side yard.
The Tucson Medical Examiner estimates the time of death to be sometime late Thursday evening.
She felt that the rigor mortis had not set in anywhere from 3 to 5 hours from the time we found him at 6 a.m.
But determining time of death by measuring rigor mortis in the body is not an exact science.
Rigor mortis is a stiffening of the muscles. It's a chemical reaction, but it doesn't always tell you an accurate time of death. It's estimated. Unless you're there, you see the person die. That's where everything is an estimate.
The medical examiner shows detectives there is no exit wound.
We were able to turn the victim over and find there was not an exit wound. It was a defect. It was against the skull in the back, consistent with the bullet still being in his brain.
Detectives check for a spent shell casing that would typically indicate an automatic handgun, but there is none to be found. They determine the weapon is most likely a revolver. A .38 caliber slug is retrieved during the autopsy, but an interesting star pattern around the entrance wound and hand scratches consistent with gun struggle piqued detectives' curiosity.
There were some burn patterns on the victim's forehead by the entrance of the wound, consistent with someone standing a few feet away and firing a handgun. It was close enough to leave the gassy particles of burn pattern on his forehead.
Everything detectives learn only substantiates the robbery theory.
Returning back to the police station, my partner and I went through all the most recent burglary arrests.
So they figured somebody had come in, burglarized it, and as they were walking out of the house, Michael was coming in, and that's when he got shot.
We contacted burglary detectives and found out that 2 known burglars had been arrested in the area of where Michael lived.
Robbery Division shows detectives 2 suspects, Joseph Keys and David Wynn.
They were known burglars in the area. The burglary that they were arrested for, I believe, on Sunday evening, there was a guitar involved. So that kind of piqued our interest. We were excited about that. We went to the jail and interviewed these 2 individuals. So they were pretty much defiant and hardcore criminals who were serving prison time before. So we didn't get a whole lot of information from them, but one of them we were able to do a search warrant on his house.
Police race to the suspect's home to search for evidence, hoping they can tie it to Michael's murder. Detectives find what looks like blood splatter on a bandana, pants, and shoes.
At that time, we felt very likely that we found our suspect and that we had the right person.
Detectives send the bandana, pants, and shoe for blood analysis and request the shoe be matched against the footprint found at the crime scene. If the blood matches Michael's, their robbery hunch will have paid off.
We knew we had some more follow-up to do, but our team was excited about that.
While they await lab results, detectives continue to build a profile on Michael, following up with known contacts and family.
From the day that the murder happened, this was nonstop. My time during the weekend after the murder, I spent contacting many of Michael's contacts that were in his cell phone. Cell phones were somewhat new at the time, so it was difficult.
As police started piecing together Michael's life and who knew him, who hung out with him, who he knew, it came up pretty quickly that he was seeing a woman who was younger than he was by about 15 years. She had been in his yoga class, but they started having an affair. And her name was Amber Trudell.
Amber's name was on the top of his contact list. I did leave a message with her, and she never got back to me.
Detective Jimenez finds it odd that Amber does not return his call after the killing. Detectives also recall Michael's kids relating their story of meeting Amber and the way she reacted to their dad spending time with them. For Michael, a devoted father to his 4 kids, Amber's erratic behavior creates stress in their relationship.
I had not known him prior to his relationship to Amber. He was flirtatious, and he had that type of personality, the look that fit the yoga instructor.
Michael is known to give private yoga lessons to students from time to time.
He gave her private lessons because she was rather shy and didn't like to go to the yoga class with everybody else.
But Michael and Amber's relationship quickly goes beyond student and teacher. They are lovers.
He described his relationship as being on and off. Not that it was volatile or anything like that, but they would be fine for a couple of weeks, and then she'd get mad at him, and then she'd stop seeing him, and then they'd go back on together. And I could see why Michael liked her. She was good looking, and it seemed like an odd match initially because of the fact that it was on and off all the time. But Michael was just having fun, which is what he did. She wanted Michael to change the way he looked. She was not happy with him dressing like a hippie, sandals and long ponytail. She didn't like that look. So I thought that was a little bit odd. But yet she continued having a relationship with him.
Public opinion on the case puts pressure to find the killer. But the lab results they're waiting for are about to spin their investigation in a whole new direction. Michael DeHakis is shot to death in what looks like a robbery gone wrong. Detectives follow their hunch and question two burglars arrested for home break-ins in Michael's Midtown neighborhood.
We felt very likely that we found our suspect and we had the right person.
But blood analysis proves them wrong.
Blood on the jeans were not of our victims, so it was just excluded from my case.
And detectives are forced to start their investigation over. It's a major setback in the case. They've lost valuable time and now have to go back to square one.
At that point, we're somewhat stuck.
But the case is still active, and detectives need a break before it goes cold fast.
I received a call from Amber's employer, and that's when our interest turned towards Amber at that point.
Detectives discover Amber has worked at an accounting office for several years and is a very good employee.
And she gave us information that Amber said that she had to go out of town but would return to work on Monday. It was Tuesday. Her manager felt that it was not like Amber not to show up to work.
But that's not all her manager has to say.
Oh, by the way, Amber is married, and they live in Midtown.
But she's having marital problems with her husband, Justin Goodwin, that are distracting her. Now, detectives are looking at a possible love triangle crime. The question is, who shot Michael? Could Justin be the jealous husband who finds out his wife is having an affair with her yoga instructor?
There are so many questions that arise when you have someone having an affair with someone, but then somebody is killed in that love triangle. I mean, there are soap operas built on things like this.
Detectives visit the bagel shop where Justin works as a night shift baker. But they're surprised to learn he quits just 3 days after Michael DeHakis is found murdered. The manager and his staff tell them they've never met his wife, but they know there are problems because of a domestic violence arrest the year before.
We're able to do a records check on Amber. We did find that there was a previous arrest of her and her husband over a domestic violence type issue where a handgun was taken into evidence.
There was one incident early in their marriage where she had gotten drunk and pointed that pistol at her own husband. She didn't shoot him, but it was enough to call police out.
Both of them had been taken into custody, and that a handgun was involved, so I felt that we need to find Amber and speak to her.
But detectives have no luck contacting her or her husband.
The employer saw Amber's husband, Justin, and another male loading items from their house into a rental truck. So she called us. I had officers dispatched to the residence where Amber and Justin lived.
When officers arrive, they find Justin is armed.
And a handgun was taken from him. It was a semi-automatic Glock.
Detectives know it is not the murder weapon, since the Glock is a .40 caliber weapon, not a .38 caliber.
And he was taken to the police station for questioning, and that's when I spoke to Justin for the first time.
You not only have to look at Amber and Michael, But you have to look at Justin, her husband. Where was he? What did he think? Did he know about this going on? Where was he that week when Michael was shot?
But Justin denies knowing anything about Amber and Michael's relationship.
It was hard to figure out where he was coming from because I didn't feel he was being truthful. I felt he did know where Amber was, but he stuck to his story that he and Amber were no longer together, that he was loading furniture because they were getting divorced and he was leaving, and he did not have any idea where she was.
He said something alibis for me in between the time frame that you guys said that I was supposedly doing whatever I was doing, or whatever you think I might have done, which I can tell you that I didn't do.
He was upset. I didn't have enough to arrest him on. A concealed handgun was just a misdemeanor at the time. Basically told him not to leave town and to please call us if they ever return.
But something else very interesting happens during that initial interview.
During the interview with Justin, we had his cell phone in our custody in another office, and his cell phone kept ringing.
The officer answers it. It's a young female asking where Justin is and who has Justin's phone. When the officer identifies himself, she hangs up.
We did a trace of the phone. The phone number that was dialed from was the office phone of Extended Stay America. We had officers in that area respond. They made contact with the manager.
Could the mysterious female caller in fact be the person of interest for the murder of Michael Dohakis?
The whole team is perplexed about this.
Was it a vindicative thing that the spurned lover did?
She was pretty angry that night.
We're thinking that we're letting the killer go.
A Tucson yoga instructor is murdered in what looks like a home robbery gone wrong. But the case goes from a random robbery shooting to a possible love triangle.
Was this cheating, did it lead up to the murder? Was it a vindicative thing that the spurned lover did?
With a domestic violence charge a year prior, detectives focused their investigation on Michael's illicit lover, Amber Trudell. After tracing a series of calls made to Justin's cell phone during his interrogation, Tucson police converge on the Extended Stay America Hotel, where they find and detain the mysterious woman caller, Amber Trudell.
In her room, we spoke with her, took a statement from her. We knew that we had Justin in several lies, that she was lying to us as well. So we took Amber to the police station and we further interviewed her there. At times, she was kind of perplexed in the fact that we were not taking her to jail.
Am I leaving after this or am I leaving jail?
It depends on, are you going to incriminate yourself?
I'm just asking because I'm handcuffed to a table.
We felt that she was less than truthful with us as well. Her story's changed a few times.
If you're the killer, you got nothing to hide, nothing to worry about. I need to eliminate you, and I can't eliminate you if you won't talk to me and tell me the truth.
She hadn't seen Michael in a while, and she did not admit to killing him, but that she had seen him days before, that she'd been dating him.
If my fingerprints were there, I told her so many times.
Okay.
If my DNA is on him, I mean, we were lovers. And of course.
Denied any involvement in his death.
You're going to be a suspect until I can eliminate you.
But what does that mean, I'm a suspect? And what, I can't leave town? Or I can't leave the state? What does that mean?
She said that she had been with Justin for a few days before and didn't know where he was, not knowing that we had him in custody.
He's here?
He's here. You put him in the spot, not me.
He's being questioned right now?
He was questioned. I figured we eliminate both of you guys, get it over with, and move on down the road.
Amber is visibly distraught to learn that her husband Justin is in custody, and she opens up to detectives.
I wasn't here on Friday, though, when people can verify that.
That's what I want to ask you about.
No, but I don't want to get into this thing where my husband is the suspect.
Amber tells detectives she left Michael that night, and traveled 3.5 hours north up the I-60 to the lush city of Show Low, Arizona.
Apparently, right after Amber had had this argument with Michael, she and her husband left Tucson to go to the White Mountains up north. His mother and stepfather lived there.
According to Justin's stepfather, Amber had been drinking the whole time. She was outside crying at times, visibly upset. She pretty much drank all of his liquor. So he knew that there was something going on. From what Justin told us in his first interview, that Amber carried a gun, always carried it in her purse. We first asked Amber where her weapon was at the extended stay in America, and she said, I don't have it. I don't know where it is. So it was not in her purse. She allowed us to search her purse.
Detectives push Amber for the truth, citing they know she has a gun based on her domestic charge a year ago.
She had no idea where her handgun was. After interviewing Justin and Amber, we decided to release them. We knew that they had an alibi, that they were in Show Low, Arizona at Justin's parents' home the morning of the 27th when Michael was found.
The detective's case stalls hopelessly for a second time.
The whole team is perplexed about this. We're thinking that we're letting the killer go, but we don't have enough evidence to tie her to the crime because she has an alibi. The investigation has reached a standstill. We know that we have to get further information to determine what happened in this case.
That break comes when Justin's stepfather, a retired detective himself, can no longer ignore his curiosity.
Our next turning point is when Justin's stepfather calls us. He's curious about Amber being outside his residence, walking around crying, and he saw her behind the storage shed. He went back there and he started taking the rocks apart and determined that there was something buried underneath them. He dug up a handgun. It was Amber's handgun. I immediately responded to Show Low, met with the detectives there, and took custody of the gun, drove back to Tucson, and we had an analysis done immediately. It was a snub-nosed .357 revolver. When I took custody of it, you could clearly see blood in the barrel of the handgun.
Within hours, detectives put the weapon through ballistics.
First, if they did any DNA on it, that's got to be done before any ballistics testing. Then ultimately it's checked for operability, it's test fired, the projectiles are compared to what was taken out of the victim from the autopsy, and it is found that they are a match.
Ballistics connect the weapon to the killer, but detectives also show something else.
What was really interesting about this, and I had never seen this in all my 17 years in homicide, was that we did a test fire of the weapon. It left a star pattern on the board that was nearly identical to the star pattern that the victim had on his forehead.
The case is starting to go their way, with an exact match of the blood found on the gun barrel to the victims. Detectives must figure out how Amber Trudell murders Michael DeHakis when she's not in Tucson the Thursday that he dies.
I definitely knew something was off. I felt, along with others in the team, that perhaps he was killed days before. I met with the doctor. We had to change our timeline. When we found Michael had larvae in his eyes, and larvae doesn't set in immediately after a fresh kill. He'd been laying there for probably 2 days on his porch without anybody finding him.
Which to me is unreal. I mean, how could somebody lay in a pool of blood at the front door with the door wide open in a neighborhood where people walk them down and drive and not be found? But that's the way it happened.
In Tucson, our front porches aren't like the front porches in the Midwest where you have the nice little white railings and everything like that. It's more of a patio, and there are some bushes in front of it.
We also realized that Michael had been in rigor mortis after his death and had already gone out of rigor mortis, so his body was very relaxed. Late September was a very hot, humid day, so his body temperature was warm based on that.
Evidence is lining up against Amber Trudell. but detectives still have to establish a motive for an arrest warrant.
One of Michael's good friends, Eli, steps forward and he says he has information about that Wednesday night and Amber Trudell's behavior that night toward Michael.
It wasn't until a week later when they had a ceremony for Michael in his honor. I was talking to several people after the ceremony, and I was explained that I just saw him that Wednesday night. They also said that he had not shown up for his yoga classes on Thursday. So since I had seen him Wednesday night, they thought that there was part of the puzzle there that could help the police discover what was going on.
Eli Curiel did come to our police station and gave me a very good interview as to what had taken place the night that Amber and Michael were at the bar together.
And I talked about the argument they had and the fact that she wanted to marry him and insisted on him marrying her, and she was pretty angry that night.
Michael invites Amber to join the yoga group for the ritual beer night.
We usually had happy hours right after our Wednesday class. We would go to a local bar, have a couple of beers. Amber had parked on the opposite side of where Michael had parked. So as we were departing, he didn't walk her to her car. He went to the back. And so she was a little bit angry about the fact that he didn't walk her to her car.
She was talking to Eli as to why, Michael didn't love her and why Michael didn't want to be with her all the time.
And she just kept on and on. Tell him to marry me. Tell him to marry me. And I said, I can't tell him that. He's been married several times before, and he doesn't want to get married right now, but he still likes you. And she wouldn't have any of that. She was very angry.
Michael, Amber, and Eli decide to go to a second bar for another drink.
They started in with a little bit of an argument. So I left, and the two of them were sitting there having an argument, and that's the last time that I saw them together.
I was able to determine from interviewing people at the second bar that Michael and Amber were at that they left together at late hours of the evening. And it's very consistent with Amber being with him and shooting him and killing him either late Wednesday evening or early Thursday morning.
This proves, together with the re-established time of death, that Amber no longer has an alibi. Detectives have enough to get their arrest warrant.
Well, we can't find Amber. She's not returned to work. I get hold of her employer. I get hold of Justin. Justin tells me that she'd left town. Maybe she went to Colorado. She's got a former boyfriend there.
She's nowhere to be found. She's not in Tucson. They don't know where she is.
Amber Trudell has just become a fugitive on the run. A yoga instructor's volatile extramarital affair with his student lead to his brutal murder. Detectives recover the murder weapon and, after re-establishing the time of death, debunk her alibi. Fearing arrest for the murder of Michael DeHakis, Amber Trudell is a fugitive on the run.
I never characterized Amber as being a cold-blooded murderer. But I didn't know a lot about her. Nobody had a clue that she was married. Nobody knew that. So I assumed that she was single, and I believe everybody else did. And I was shocked. I was floored that she turned into a maniac, devil, crazy woman that was completely opposite of what I knew of her before the murder.
But regardless of what anyone thinks of Amber, she's now a fugitive. The news goes out across the country.
We were working closely with the Marshal Service at the time. They had agents back east watching Amber's grandmother's house in upstate New York.
U.S. Marshals alert Detective Ben Jimenez that Amber has switched vehicles.
We determined that Amber had sold the white pickup to a car dealership in Connecticut and traded it in for a red Chevy Blazer, I believe.
Amber signs the sales agreement using her brother's Plainville, Connecticut address. The Marshal Service tracked the Blazer to her grandmother's house in New York, behind a storage shed.
And they were able to determine that Amber was there. They saw her come in, going from the house to the Chevy Blazer at times. They took her into custody, determined that she may be going into Canada.
United States Marshals arrest Amber Trudell for the murder of Michael DeHakis.
She was in a lot of denial. I told her she was under the arrest for her boyfriend at the time, Michael DeHakis, that we had the handgun that had matched up. And she didn't want to answer questions at that point.
They escort her back to Tucson to stand trial for first-degree murder.
I was writing crime for the Tucson Citizen newspaper. By the time they arrest someone and they start going to show up in court, that's when I took over the case and started writing about this murder case.
March 2005. Amber has her day in court.
Everybody wanted to know Amber's story. Why did she leave? If she was innocent, because we started hearing that it was self-defense, there had been an argument. Was it suicide? Was she an abused partner? There were many different scenarios coming through as she appeared in court for her hearings and her public defender started filing motions.
The public defender portrays Amber as the victim of Michael's sexual predator tactics over his younger and vulnerable yoga student.
We had two very different competing images of Michael, the victim. Was he the fun-loving, charismatic hippie who wouldn't harm anybody, who everybody liked? Or was he an abusive, violent, controlling lover who took over Amber's life?
The prosecution paints a very different scenario, that of a manipulative woman deluded with her illicit love affair, who loses her temper when Michael rejects her ridiculous pleas for marriage.
And so, as you're watching her, you're wondering, is she what she says she is? Was this very quiet, meek person capable of cold-blooded murder? Of putting a gun to the forehead of the man she supposedly loves and killing him? It was very intriguing to watch this playing out in the courts with all these different scenarios, nobody quite knowing who was the real Michael and who was the real Amber.
In a landmark move for a murder trial, Amber and her lawyer decide to let her testify.
She had a compelling story, and she appeared to get emotional and set up a case so that Michael was the one who brought about his death.
She said that Michael got mad because she said she had told him that she had to go back to her husband. As she was getting ready to leave, she grabs her purse and her gun, and that he got down on one knee and grabbed the hand and the gun from her and put the gun up to his head and said, "Shoot me because I'm a bad man and I treated you poorly."
And somehow that gun went off. That's Amber's story. Meantime, his friends and family had come forward and said, no, that Michael was actually thinking of breaking up with her.
I don't believe her version because it's contrary to everything that anybody knew about Michael. There wasn't a mean bone in his body.
And again, you're watching Amber in the courtroom being very passive, very quiet.
We all felt that she was not telling the truth. And the way she described it, the gun was at his forehead, and we felt this couldn't be because there wasn't a contact wound left that was more consistent with being shot from a distance.
So everyone wondered, is the jury going to buy this? Are they going to let her go?
The first trial ended up in a hung jury. There was one juror that felt that Amber was innocent.
For the people of Tucson, the murder of the yoga instructor in Midtown has now entered the truly bizarre. But for family and friends still coping with his loss, the mistrial is a devastating blow. Many wondering why certain aspects of Amber's violent past are not even entered as evidence.
Now, one of the things that did not come out in trial, there was a audio tape that was made by her husband that was not brought into evidence. And that audio tape was very revealing about her character when she drank. The tape reveals her screaming at the top of her lungs, drunk, threatening to kill her husband.
So even though a mistrial was declared and a jury couldn't reach their verdict, that didn't mean that Amber was free to leave. Prosecutors had every intention of trying her again. And so months after the mistrial, Amber was on trial again.
The second trial came 6 to 8 months later, and the prosecutors decided to go for second-degree murder.
In the second trial, because we all knew what she was going to say, I was watching her body language. When she was talking about the details of the shooting, she kept her eyes on the floor. A lot of times the experts will say that is proof of a lie. She doesn't want them to see the lies in her eyes.
Amber Trudell is convicted of second-degree murder and is sentenced to 13 years in jail.
I did not particularly like the 13 years. I thought that it should have been more. The family felt the same way. Of course, it was up to the judge to make the determination.
I've covered a lot of murder cases in my career. And this case, Amber Trudell, does stand out as one of the most interesting ones because of the human drama and the tragedy of someone like Michael. Certainly the world can use many more Michaels.
But every time September 24th comes around, I do think of Michael, and we reminisce about Michael and his character and what we would have probably been doing if he was still around. The fact that he was gone way too soon was a tragedy, and we just miss him dearly.
Michelle Despain comes home to take care of some business with the family real estate company. The house is found in disarray, and Mark Despain is dead.
She walked in, and Mark was laying on the floor in the kitchen in a pool of blood.
The gunshot wound to the face would have been the kill shot, so to speak.
Very graphic. Horrific crime scene.
Could it have been a box burglary? Could it have been a box robbery?
2 bullet casings are found at the scene, belonging to a .380 caliber pistol. But who